What's going on, everyone? Jim here, RCAB. Doing a little work today on my niece's Redcat Gen 8 Jeep Comanche. We did pick up a new item for the vehicle, so let's take a peek at that. We have an RC 4-wheel drive Warren 9.5 CTI winch. It's a lot larger than I expected in all reality, everyone. Yeah, I know I should have read the measurements on it online. I was actually kind of expecting this to be a little bit smaller than the 8274, but this one is actually kind of almost as large as the 8274 winch, just a whole lot less power. So, nevertheless, everyone, we got a winch for my niece, and we have a RC 4-wheel drive wireless winch controller right there for her as well. And that is going to be tonight's project, is trying to get the old winch mounted up onto the truck. So let's get our winch out of the box and out of the bag here and see what we're looking at. Hey, silica gel. They gave us some mounting screws right there. So we do have some hardware. Alright, there we go, everyone. Not a bad looking little unit there. Definitely looks realistic. I don't think that's a functioning lever of any kind. At least all the stickers seem to be applied rather well on it. My last 8274 winch, a couple of the stickers were just barely applied. Getting ready to fall off of it. Get their wires all tucked around in here. So, all right, everyone, let's go ahead here and get the body off of the truck. See what we're working with, trying to mount it onto our stock Redcat Gen 8 front bumpers. All right, so we have our lights currently hooked up to a male JST connector right here. And that is going right over here, everyone, to this wired winch controller. That's what we're toggling our lights on and off with. We need to find a new location for our new wireless winch controller, which is going to be for our winch itself. And most likely I'll put it right over here on the opposite fender well. So since we have our wired winch controller over here, I'll probably most likely put our wireless one right over here on this side, just to kind of balance everything out and keep it focused right there. Excuse me as I do a little eyeballing here, everyone. I think I can make this work. Kind of cool. At least we got enough room up here, everyone, up on top of the between the push bar on the bumper and the Viking double roller fairlead right there, just barely fitting in here. Lining up holes for holes here. That is pretty darn. Doing a quick measurement on our stuff here from center to center on our holes. Looks like right around 50 millimeters. Wow. That seems like it's just a little bit over 50 millimeters to these guys. It certainly looks close. We might be able to just use our stock holes on our front bumper to get this hooked right on. The only problem is that this crossbar is actually hitting the winch, everyone, and it's keeping us from getting that far enough forward to use those holes. What I'm saying is that the winch needs to move backwards a little bit, or this plate that is mounted to needs to move forward a little bit. quite a little bit. In all reality, it's either that or we eliminate our crossbar up on top, which we can do. I can cut that off and put it on the grinding wheel and smooth that down flat and make it look like it was never there. Or possibly I could heat this up with a torch, this bar, and bend it out a little bit. We might be able to get it to where we need to be. I have to bend out quite a bit. Oh, just a little bit more. In here. That's it right there. Pretty close. Yeah, it's not too bad. We can wedge it in just like that. Puts a slight bend on that bar, but it's not terrible. And it gives the winch something to lean up against as well. From what I can see, everyone, and you're not going to be able to see that, is that this lower hole over here is just a little bit to the outside. So I'm going to have to come in with a drill straight up from the bottom and probably just widen those holes up a little bit. And I think that'll give us enough gap to take up any kind of slop that we may have. So we'll get our winch out of the way and prep a drill and see if we can get this mounted in place. Slight disalignment with the holes here, everyone. They are very, very close, but it's just a pinch off. So I use a bigger drill bit, slightly larger, about the size of an M3mm screw. Or slightly smaller than M3, and I'm coming in from the top, and I'm not going all the way through the bumper. I'm just going about 2/3 of the way down. That way it gives me a little bit of wiggle room up on top to move that around. So here's what we're basically looking at. Came in here and just widened up these holes just a little bit. Didn't go all the way through the bumper. Only went about 2/3 of the way through. That way we're maintaining a good solid bottom to grab a hold of. A large surface area. Let's put it that way, everyone. A little tongue-tied this evening. Be about right there. Pretty easy, just getting our winch on there, at least onto our stock bumper. Not a very strong winch, everyone, as far as power output goes with this Warren 9.5 CTI. Of course, there's no stats. What the heck? How come there's nothing on there, man? Well, you know, we can go online and look, everyone, but I want to say it's right around 9 pounds rolling. 9 pounds rolling weight and maybe 6 pounds. Don't quote me on this. I'm thinking around 6 pounds deadlift and 9 pounds rolling, if I'm not mistaken. Somewhere in that area, which isn't quite a lot. Not too sure what this vehicle actually is weighing in at. Alright, everybody, with the body and the battery on a fishing scale here, we are right around 8 pounds. 3.5 kilograms. Right around 8 pounds, everybody. So that means that if we need to use this winch, we need to use the throttle at the same time. That is for darn sure. Because it's only rated at 6.6 pounds deadlift and 9 pounds rolling. I had to look that up. Well, everyone, slight revision in plans with the old winch mounts there. The 2.5 millimeter screws that they had going in there, or smaller, I wasn't liking the way that those were sitting in there, everyone. and I didn't think it was very strong for holding the winch together. So I came in and drilled all these holes out, quite a bit larger, and installed some M3mm screws in here instead, because I was only able to come up with one lock nut for the back, and the back half of this winch where it's threaded here, right down there, everyone, right where it threads in, there's not much metal there, and it strips out pretty quick. I didn't have any lock nuts to put on the back for those really small screws, so I just drilled it out so I could get an M3mm on there and have lock nuts on the back half, so it's held down a lot more secure. Then we've got tapered head screws on here, and they just countersink into the plastic, so it's nice and flush on top of the plastic there. So not too bad. Just have one more to go on that one, everyone. I haven't done the last screw. I figured I'd wait for all of you guys so I could show you the little revisions that I had made. All right, we're all good. All retrofitted for M3mm screws. So that baby is nice and solidly mounted. All right, everyone, moving on to our next step here, which is going to be wiring up our winch controller. I can either wire this up battery pack, everyone, or I can wire it up off the receiver. I'd rather wire it up off the receiver. Only problem is that we're using a 4-channel receiver, and all 4 channels are being used currently. So right here on channel 3, once again, going to our headlights on our vehicle, right here, going to a wired winch controller. So I don't know if I would necessarily want to tap into channel 3. Channel 4, on the other hand, is going over to our rock lights. So, you know, what do you do? Well, worst case scenario, we could always shut off the rock lights if we were towing or winching ourselves out at night and have all our power for the winch. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hook a Y connector right up to our channel 4 over here and get power from channel 4 to power up our winch controller, which I'm going to put over here on the other side of the truck. This is our Warn wireless winch controller, RC 4-wheel drive. Have several of these, they work great. The RC 4-wheel drive wireless remote and receiver controller set will pull you out of any tough spot. Some LiPo battery voltages may be higher than 11.1 volts. Please carefully check the voltage prior to using your battery. Use a BEC in conjunction with a 3-cell LiPo. So they want you to drop your voltage down if you're using a 3-cell LiPo. Here is our part number, everybody, for this wireless winch controller. Part number Z-S1092. Z-S1092. As you open it up, I'd recommend reading the instructions before you start going to town on everything here. It says right here, connect the winch plug into the winch control plug or box plug. So it does come with this little extension here, the male JST on it. This goes out to your winch from the winch control box. So they want you to plug that in first. Plug winch control box plug into control box marked winch positive and winch negative. Remember to check the direction of your wires and plug red positive and black negative. Then plug the battery into the power connection wire. Push and hold and bind button on the wireless control box while plugging in the battery connection. So they want you to push and hold the bind button on your wireless control box while plugging in the battery connection. So right here, everyone, they're telling you, number 1, take your winch, plug it into your little winch extension wire, which is this guy right here that comes in the package. From there, everyone, they want you to connect your winch control line up into your winch controller. So here's our winch controller. There's a female JST on it. And they want you to connect that up into here, winch positive, winch negative. So that goes right there. This also came with this little jumper wire going to a S connector right there. And this is for a external battery if you're running off of that. So they're telling you to plug in your external battery right there. From that point, everyone, they want you to push and hold the bind button on the wireless control box unit, blah blah blah, and while you're plugging in the battery simultaneously. So they want you to plug your battery into here while you're pushing and holding this little teeny weeny button right down there. So you need something not sharp and small to push into there and hold that down while you're plugging your battery in at the same time. Alright, looking at a remote. Remove the battery plug or tag and allow power to your remote. Push and hold buttons on the TX to allow binding to take place. So I'd suggest you pull that little tag out beforehand, because it's going to be hard to do that while you're holding that thing in at the same darn time. So pull your tag beforehand, that way your remote's ready to go. And then once again, hold down your bind button, plug in your power going into your winch controller. At that point in time, you want to push down both your winch control directions in and out at the same time to allow binding to take place. Afterwards, plug the winch plug wire into the control box and check operation of the winch. Which is kind of funny, everyone, that they tell you to do this at the end to plug your winch into the control box, because they tell you up here when you're connected to your jumper wire, then they tell you to plug it into your control box, tell you to plug in the power, do all the binding and all that other good nonsense, tell you to do all this stuff, and then tell you to plug it in again. So obviously some point in time through here they want you to unplug that because they don't tell you anything about that. Down here they're just telling you to plug it back in again. So that's kind of messed up, really. So there you go, RC four-wheel drive. You kind of messed up on your instructions. Taking a look at our little key fob style TX remote transmitter. This would be in, this would be out. Got a little tag on the back that we need to pull to make our battery connection. All right, everyone, so I'm going to be doing this differently. Once again, I'm going to be jumpering off of my 4th channel over here, my rock lights. So I'm going to have to make a custom wire for that. I need to make a jumper wire, and I need to get everything wired up. So let me get some stuff together here. So what I need to do, everyone, is I dug up a Y connector with 2 female JS or S style connectors there, 1 male. So this can go into the receiver, split off to our rock lights, and then take off over to our winch. So we got that covered. It's an ugly wire. I do not like it. Alright, next phase of operation, everyone, is I need a double-headed male S connector. So I need 2 male S connectors to make this work. One to go into that female 3-way over there, and another one to go into the female connection on our winch controller. So I dug up 1 S connector right here that I have laying around, and for the other one, we're going to rob it off the battery power cable right here. So we're going to take it off of this, make these 2 into 1 connector. I've got our winch positive wire ran right up around our light wire right through here, and it's popping out right here. Kind of camouflaged in there. Our next cable here that plugs into our winch and goes over to our controller box right there. So what I'm going to do with this one, everyone, is I'm going to wrap it up around a screwdriver here, old school technique. Many of you may know this, but some of you may not. But this is a good way to put a pigtail on a wire. If you want to tidy things up and make it not look so messy. You have a bunch of excess wire laying around. You don't feel like chopping it down and soldering it down, because you never know. Next time down the road, you might need that full length if you wanted to take this winch off and put it onto a different vehicle. So carefully winding this around a screwdriver, just like that, from end to end. Making sure not to pull on the plugs too bad, and then just putting a little smush on our wires. And there we go. We've got a nice little pigtail. So we'll take our little pigtail here, everyone, and plug it right into our winch control wire, like so. We are all plugged in right there. And there is our pigtail hanging off. All we need to do is stretch it down to here for when we mount our control box right here on the inner fender. And we got the soldering iron fired up. We got a little jig set up out here. Cut our regular Tamiya style battery connector off the end of that. Go ahead here and strip off some wire.
ridiculous when I see my flash get brighter there.
Alright, we got our wires twisted up. Well, we'll slide our 2 pieces of red shrink wrap down on our wires here. Taking them all the way down to the end of the plug, which is a long shot. We're taking them all the way down to the end, that way they don't heat up in the process of soldering this stuff together. Now, there's several ways you can do this, everyone. You can jam your wires together like this, end to end, and twist them together or whatever, but you know what, over the years I prefer just to twist them together like this and then solder them. That way at least I know it's connected. It heats up quick. That was soldered a minute ago. I'm trying to thin it out a little bit here, everyone. I let the solder pull through the wire to the heat. So I got the gun on one side, or the iron on one side, and the solder on the opposite side of the wire. I'm letting the heat pull the solder through the wire. And we're all set. Alright, so that's cooled down by now. Take the wires and just kind of bend them over like that to the smallest diameter wire. This is a fatter diameter wire. This is a smaller diameter wire. I'm taking it over to the smaller diameter one like that. Run our shrink wrap up. Alright. So we got our shrink wrap in place, everyone. We'll pull out another little micro torch here that works very good. All set. Alright, everyone, let's start getting things plugged in here. We got our little jumper wire. I already put a little curly Q on the end of it. We'll go ahead here and plug it into our other little pigtail here, or splitter, which has already been ran and hidden and tucked away down yonder there. So we're all good to go with our positive, everyone. This is the time where we need to do our binding on our little winch control unit here. I'm using just a piece of hard copper wire here, everyone. That's what I'm going to use to depress the button on yonder winch controller. We'll go ahead and take our pull tab off, like so. Go ahead here and get our ESC and all that other nonsense turned on here, so that we know we have power going to the vehicle. Alright, so we're all live. Yep, we're good to go. Alright, everyone. Our next step is going to be plugging in our winch button here, our winch control box, and pushing down our button, our bind button, and plugging it in at the same time, and then holding both of these buttons simultaneously afterwards. So we got our bind button in position. I'm putting our winch cable over there. Little piece of copper right here, everyone. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. Just pushing down on the bind button currently, plugging in our positive connection, which is right down here below out of your sight line. It is blinking. So our box is blinking currently, everyone. I'm going to push down both of these buttons simultaneously, and we're bound up. So we're all good. And we just have to mount this in place. So we'll go ahead and get a piece of double-sided sticky tape cut and get this sitting right where we need to sit it, and we'll be good to go on this project. sure to press down on the winch controller here for a couple seconds on this tape. Make sure that it's adhering well. Alright, just get this into position where we want to sit. Get our wires all sitting right where I want to have them sitting. I'll put that right there. Get it all wired back in here. Going the right way, of course. So there we go, everyone. We've got our winch controller hooked up, sitting right across the street from our other winch controller. All good to go. We've got our wires in little pigtails. We've got our ugly little 3-wire splitter down over here, taken care of and sitting off to the side, and everything is kind of camouflaged in with the rest of the mess. It's a matter of getting everything hooked back up here, getting our light wire hooked back up for our chassis lights. And there she be, first look. The winch all installed here on our Redcat Gen 8 stock bumper. Once again, didn't use the hardware that RC four-wheel drive gave you for the winch. I went ahead and used some M3mm screws that were tapered, so they countersink into the bumper, so they're nice and flush here. Drilled the holes out a little bit larger so they'll accept an M3mm, running through our stock mounting holes there. Put lock nuts on the back half for those 2 M3s on the back. The fronts are just threaded into that winch plate. And it is a tight fit. Once again, this bar is being pushed out slightly with having that winch put in there. So a nice sturdy fit there as far as things go. And we took that wireless remote there, everyone, and mounted it right here on the back of my niece's Spectrum DX4C radio. Reason we did this, everybody. Technically, when you're winching, you need to be giving yourself a little bit of throttle as well and moving forward as you're winching yourself forward out of wherever you're stuck. So for a person with smaller hands, it's very difficult to drive one-handed, so you can work that key fob at the same time. So we've got it set up like this with the key fob right here on the back. Nice easy access for indexing in and out on your winch. So all my niece has to do is just switch over to her middle finger to work the throttle. She can still steer with her right hand, and then she can index her winch right up here nice and easily. So a nice and convenient location there, especially for somebody with smaller hands. Once again, we do have our winch all hooked up, so there we go, spooling it out, spooling it back in. So we're all good to go on that aspect. Once again, we do have our lights hooked up to an RC four-wheel drive wired winch controller through channel 3. So we can toggle those on via the radio through a 2-position switch setting on our controller or on our radio. Our winch, once again, is wired into channel 4, which is wired in with our rock lights. So as long as we're not using our rock lights at the same time as the winch, everybody, we should be okay. So if we have to do any kind of night winching, we're just going to have to shut off our rock lights before we fire up that winch. Once again, if we have to use it in the daytime, obviously we're not going to have our rock lights on. So no issues right there as far as confliction in power as to what's getting what. And throughout the miracle of editing, everybody, we have fixed our suspension on the truck. We did get it sitting lower, right where I want to get it sitting. We did have some RC four-wheel drive King off-road shock springs that showed up in the mail while we were doing this video, sitting noticeably lower than what it was previously. Looking at our amount of travel that we have up front here, once again, trying to get as much, not that much downward travel. So we've got very little downward travel. Well, there's still quite a bit of downward travel. And then we gained all kinds of upward motion there, which is going to give us a nice low center of gravity and allow our tires to drop down when we're stretching out. So not too bad there, everyone. It's about where I wanted it sitting. Those are the stock shock springs up front for those RC four-wheel drive King Off-Road 110 mils. And these are the yellow springs that we have on the back here. And there's our how much preload that we have going on with our shocks. So not that much downward motion with them before they bottom out. But once again, we get all that upward stretch for when we're crawling up and over things. So that's basically where we want it sitting, everybody. Still, once again, when it comes down to it, we still have that ample amount of ground clearance underneath there. Can definitely get my entire fist under here without a problem, everybody. So all kinds of ground clearance, getting our lower center of gravity, running almost a full sag suspension setup on that. So there we go, everyone. She's all back together and ready to go, and hopefully my niece is surprised when she comes out in the morning and notices that her truck is sitting significantly lower, as well as having a winch on the front of the vehicle. So that's going to do it, everyone. Very much appreciated for y'all sticking around and watching the video, and we will see you all on the next one.